seen it, thing that Willie Nelson has out? It's a poker trick. Go to YouTube and do Willie Nelson card trick. It is amazing. What he does with the card. Only to him one time.
9 minutes.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's what? 5 piles, right?
You start with your 5 and this one's 6 piles.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah. You start with the number, right? Right? So I'm gonna flip all these over. Alright. Now, I'm not gonna look, and I want you guys to take away 2 piles. I don't care what 2 piles you take away. Take away 2 piles and just kind of stack them on top of each other. We got our 2 piles? Just take a pile. Everybody take a pile. Alright. Take your pile. Put them on top of that. Good?
Yep.
Alright. Now I don't know which piles you took, obviously, right? Here's the best part. I'll peel off a couple. Peel off some of the cards, right? What's this? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 2, 3 cards. 7. Never mind. Didn't work.
Okay.
Oh, it's supposed to be 3. Not very good at this stuff.
You are playing in a wild card game?
I should be, yeah. I gotta derail you. No 3P champions, like complete 3P champions.
Oh, so you won the...
2 years ago, I also won the final game. Last year, I came in 5th.
And this year, if I have anything to say about it, it's gonna come in like... Yes! I just shot software. She checked and stuff. They're all here.
I love the way software now tracks the stack size of the players, the pot size. Rick, one time last night, had like 983. That was the highest I saw it.
Yeah. Well, I told him at the table, I'm like, I'm not gonna let you get 1,000. So I was gonna give him like kidnap or get $1,000 off.
Oh, is that?
Here they had a cash game last week. And tell you what, Parker's got a set of guns.
Oh, see him in real life.
He looks like a linebacker, a nose guard or something.
Nice.
Yeah. I didn't know Steve.
Oh, no, I didn't either.
He's handed. He's going to Frankie took his money and left the breakdown.
Frank got money and then he was like, I'm done. I'm not gonna deal with all that.
Can you throw 2 cards at each other's pots? Yeah.
You let him know?
Alright.
Ready to go with the rest of them?
I just did it.
Oh. Oh, nice.
We it keeps going slow than fast. It's kind of glitching right now. Rick's coming to get your seat.
I know.
I think they were gonna have a race.
Well, that is the card of the time.
Sign up things to come.
We elected just to go one way.
Cool.
Not a whole race.
Can you make any comments on you like about your wife wanting to have extra half inch or?
He knows my wife.
Buy the Corvette. Just stay in the garage. I'll never come out of the garage ever. I'll never take it out.
Told her I wanted a vet. Christmas, you got one. You showed that. Instead of a Corvette.
This would probably be high. Good.
You got a bigger size head next time around. I got a bigger fat head.
Did everybody else just
I got a big fat head.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am. I sort of have a big fat head.
Football helmet would be. No. In other words, football helmet would be difficult for you as well.
I don't think you must have been.
I did. I tried. Something. I don't have to kill them or not, but. I wish I knew one.
Boston.
Oh, this is sweet.
Captain.
Probably.
Rhino.
I don't know if they want this on camera or not. Draw a card for button. This one of you's gotta get the button. High card wins. But make sure to keep that out. Yeah, keep that to where I can reach it. So my reach is gonna be about here. So like gonna be see raises it out.
No, it was a reach.
Yeah.
Reach.
Okay. Are you on a signal yet?
Heads up play button's first card, right?
I just set it up as
Okay. Well, that's how I set it up, but that's how they drew it. But I'm just saying, you want the heads up. Typically, heads up. On the button's gonna get the first card.
Check.
Correct.
the button gets the
The
first
button
card.
gets the first card, then the second card, then the third card, then the fourth card.
No, the button's always the dealer, so the
Correct, but he still gets the first card. He gets the first card off the deck. It's still gonna go. Small blind's gonna get the first card before the big blind.
dealer always.
Pre-flop, he's gonna get the action. Pre-flop, post-flop, he's gonna get the action.
Not that I'm aware of.
You say the button gets the first card?
Yeah.
No, second card.
Are you sure?
Because the button's a dealer.
I know, but button's also small blind.
Yeah. So the button will deal.
I mean, I'm okay
to the
with
big
that.
blind, but then the button will act first pre-flop.
Yeah.
And second post-flop.
I thought it was dealer got the first card.
Because I mean, before dealers, he wasn't.
Correct. He would be dealing the card,
so
but
you
he
give the
could
first one to somebody
essentially
else.
deal himself first.
The button always deals first card to his team.
I never reset, so I need it 60 seconds.
But it's tough because if you think about it, the small blind should get a card before the big one.
In a full ramp.
You know.
It always flip-flop.
I mean, hey, it's random
gonna get
no matter
two
what.
cards.
You're both gonna get 2 cards. I'll let you pull 2 out of the deck if you want.
You said about 60 seconds for the cards to load back up.
I'm leaving. I don't care.
So I can chat until they're ready.
You want the phones to be off?
And then I can play.
Mine's in the other room, does it matter?
Yep.
No. Evidently, we must be live now.
It should be.
Yeah, Mike.
You want to turn the phone off of it?
Yeah, can I put that over there on the table over there? Absolutely.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in for our first ever heads-up battle for first place of the Akron Poker League. We have Steve Day in the West Virginia t-shirt here versus Rick Wallen. They tied for first place points, so they're going to battle it up heads-up style tonight. We'll be getting the cards in the air here momentarily, and we'll be talking over some of the different strategies that you would have when you're playing heads-up versus playing full ring, six max, anything like that. So you're going to see a little bit of a different style than you're used to if you've been watching some of our other shows.
West Virginia?
We'll be getting going here shortly.
Canova.
Real quick, I'll let you know that tonight's game is brought to you by RFIDpoker.com, creators of the RFID table in action you see tonight. Book your own show on RFIDpoker.com. If you're interested in your own table, we have standard oval championship tables available, built to your own specifications.
The audience probably look like you're getting somebody's finger. Because you got a northern panhandle, you got an eastern panhandle, and it looks like that. I mean, it does look like the map, and I grew up over here. Eastern panhandle.
Well, Steve's doing his own rendition of how West Virginia looks. Looked a little bit like a different kind of salute to me. So both these guys bested a field of about 45 to 50 different players throughout the season, and they both tied with a total of 123 points, which is a really good finish for both of them. Okay, the cards in the air. We're gonna get underway here. Right off the bat, Rick raises his pocket threes. Steve has a couple garbage cards and you can let it go. There might be a little bit of a feeling out process, especially when you don't. I mean, they've probably never played heads up against each other, so they're gonna have to take their time, see what their opponent's tendencies are, and go from there. I think Rick's probably a little bit more aggressive than Steve will be. But I know Steve a little better. I know that he definitely knows how to adjust and knows how to use his skills against his opponent.
So Rick, you should be up 50, right? So you should have 50.
Steve's contemplating here what to do with a raise or a call. The hands are blind. There they are.
Steve is small blind at 25.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Get my money back, raise.
Raised to 150.
So early on, they both raised 3x, which is fairly standard, but heads up play, I like to go double or maybe 2.5. So maybe instead of 150, I'd do like 100 or 125. But that's kind of just player preference.
Oh, did you move it?
I did.
I won't touch it.
You would have the official button over, right?
Shit, if you want me to be. Well, this work I gotta do. Steve, your big blind at 50.
Alright, button will be on Rick this time.
25.
Wow, some really good hands been dealt so far. Pocket threes for Rick in the first hand, ace-10 for Steve in the second hand. Rick decides to limp on the button here.
125.
So Steve took my advice early on and raised a little less than 3x.
Total amount. What do you want?
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh, do you have to put that in manually every time?
This was a really tight race though down the stretch for our top 7 finalists in the Akron Poker League. Only 9 points separated first place and 7th place, so it was a tight battle all the way to the finish.
Calls 50. Option right.
Great.
300 total. 250 more.
So Rick is being quite aggressive here. Assuming Steve didn't have too strong of a hand if he's just going to limp the button. But King 9 on the button is a fairly strong hand in heads up play.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's wrong?
And that is the exact perfect flop for Rick.
Check, check. Set me down.
Steve does not want to see a jack or a king in this spot.
250.
Now Steve thinking, well, I still have one overcard and a gut shot, but decides to lay down. I kind of thought Rick might show that one there. When you flop a full house heads up, you gotta feel pretty happy about yourself. But just a reminder to our viewing audience, next week we'll be having a wildcard game. So any players of our Akron Poker League that played at least 5 times this season, 5 out of the 10 meetings, and is not in the top 7 in points, they have the ability to come play our wildcard game to secure themselves a seat in our final game, which would be the following Monday. So December 1st will be our wildcard game. December 8th will be our final game where we crown ourselves a champion.
Right.
150 total. Call.
Rick is just really aggressive at this point. Kind of surprised. And he outflopped Steve again. But Steve did flop a gut shot, straight draw, and a flush draw.
Right.
Raise to 5.
Ooh, Steve quickly lets it go. It was a big raise by Rick, but it's early on. They're still pretty deep, so you think maybe Steve would peel one off there.
Are we doing one heads up match? Is that what the...
But our players that did secure themselves a seat in the final game are Rick Wallen, Steve Day, Papa Z, Rob B, myself, Vicky, and Brad. So we'll have to we'll see who our top 2 finishers are in our wildcard game to see who joins us at the final table.
Right.
It's gonna be a great show next week, and it'll be an even better show 2 weeks from now when we do crown our champion.
Steve folds.
Steve just can't seem to get rid of that Jack 8. I do feel that heads up is more of a patience game. You kind of have to pace yourself. You can't get too upset if you lose a few pots in a row because it's definitely, I wouldn't say a marathon. I'll say maybe a half marathon as opposed to a sprint, as you know, in other instances. So Steve just needs to buy his time and keep his head up. This is the early stages. Blinds are still pretty low.
Tony, do you want us to wait for you?
Is there a call?
Call is 50.
Okay, call and call.
Check.
I would like to see a raise by Steve, but he's playing a little more cautious right now. You can see a min bet by Steve here.
Bet 250. Great call.
That was not a min bet. That was 2.5 times the pot. So a few unorthodox plays so far, but it's early on. They're still trying to find their poker sea legs, if you will.
I'm not.
I would like to thank Chris Ward for dealing for us tonight. It's always a luxury to have a full-time dealer at your table.
Call is 50. Check.
And these are a couple typical hands that you'll get heads up. You know, you're not going to be dealt premium cards very often, so you do have to kind of play some speculative hands here and there to win yourself the pot. And Steve does so with the 7 high. Gets Rick off the better hand. I definitely feel that aggression is key heads up. You want to put your opponent to the test more often than he's putting you to the test. So far, I think Rick has definitely been the more aggressive player.
Right.
He's still making these big raises. And Steve comes along. Pretty good flop for Steve. Flopping second pair. Decent kicker. Rick with a couple backdoor draws. Steve won the pot there, but I kind of would have liked to see him check call in that spot instead of leading out. I think he makes more money by allowing Rick the continuation bet on a board like that. A lot of times a pre-flop raiser will bet again in sequence after the flop. So if you check to him, allow him to make his continuation bet, and you can reevaluate your hand. You know, you can decide to call or raise when you flop middle pair like that. So Steve's ratcheting up the aggression here. Gets the job done there. 10-4. Maybe used to be a big rig driver. 10-4, good buddy.
We started about 3 minutes after 7. So, can you say a timer on that?
There's a way. It's probably fine with the user.
Rick with a pretty strong holding here on the button.
We have about 5 minutes left in
So Rick's standard open here seems to be 5x, which is a little peculiar in my book, but it hasn't really turned Steve off too much here. So we saw a second ago when Steve led out with second pair. This time he's a little more cautious with the ace high flop. Now Steve has 2 pair. I think he's gonna bet
600 bet.
just because he's afraid of the flush draw. And Rick having the nut flush draw, I think he's probably gonna call.
Call.
I think it's a pretty safe card to bet again. Steve does go for the value bet. The same bet he made on the flop he made on the river. And he takes down a good sized pot. The momentum is definitely swinging in Steve's favor right now. Not much chatter at the table. I'm not sure how well these guys know each other. I think they just know that they're in the battlefield right now, so it's tight lips and stern gazes at one another. Oh, Steve is just pedal to the metal right now. I love it. I do feel that Steve feels like he has a little bit more on the line, going for his three-peat, his 3rd championship in a row, or 3rd first place finish in a row, I should say. I think that's been done since maybe my old buddy Mike Dempsey back in the day, so I'm happy for Steve to have this chance. I don't think the button is right. I think Steve raised that last hand.
Okay, Rick is first half, bring it back. Part it back. Part it back. Part it
And we had a misdeal there. They thought the button had been moved, but they thought the button needed to be moved, but it had already been moved. So just bear with us. We'll get to the next hand here in a moment. I do feel a little lonely in the booth tonight. My my partner in crime, Paul Boston, is not sitting to my immediate right. That's okay. I'll see him again in about a week. Actually, I do believe he'll be playing in that wild card game. So you get to see him on the felt for a change and see all that stuff he says about everybody.
That's part of the flag.
So sorry about that. So you can see Paul Boston play on the table next Monday and see if all the things he preaches when he can see the cards, if he actually acts on them when he can't see the cards. And in 2 weeks you can see if I do the same. Really quick chip count if you took a screenshot of that one.
Rick Mack, you, I don't think so. 2 words, you know, all during the match.
It hurts from the top.
Oh, okay.
Okay, actions on Rick.
I know this could easy to pay attention to.
We currently
150 total.
card free here, so we're gonna play blind for a minute. King 7-5 on the flop. Then go went check by Steve and a continuation bet by Rick, and I think Steve's gonna just chuck it in the middle.
Small.
Small blind, yeah.
If you're enjoying our stream tonight, you can go back and look at some of our past streams on our Facebook page. Just go to Facebook and search Poker on Air. You can find our page, like it, share it, tell your friends about it, and you can find some of our older videos on there. We've had a couple cash games. We've had some sit and goes. All of them are great content and fantastic learning material. Just check the flop. I think it's 7-4-7, 3 on the turn.
Blinds are up.
This will be the last level at 2550. Next hand will be 5100. Let's see if we get the cards up on the screen for this hand.
5100. 5100, Steve. 50. I believe they go 50, 5100, right?
Okay, action is on Rick here. He limps in. Steve quickly checks.
I apologize. Rick, did you raise or was it just call?
Call.
Okay, Steve, check.
Yeah. He checks again. Rick checks. Too close. $100 bet. $100 call. Steve.
We got 4 clubs on the deck on the flop, 1 spade, a couple jacks.
800 total. 7 more.
Big bet in the river. I'm guessing Rick had at minimum the king of clubs, if not the ace of clubs in that hand. There's the current chip counts. Steve Day ahead by 400. So as you can see, it's anyone's game at this point.
I was out of town deer hunting. Could have stayed where I was. Doing good deer hunting.
Calls.
Steve limps in on the button here. Rick quickly checks.
Down home were you?
No, I was in Missouri.
9-7-2 on the flop. Couple spades. Big bet by Steve. 300 into 200. Never can quite tell if that means he's got top pair and he's afraid of the flush, or if he has the flush draw and he's trying to bet on the come here.
Tony always has this second season such that either the final game or the next to the final game, I'm out of town, and I think it's all planned.
They're still up in first place. Or competing for first, so you know what you can do. 15. break after this one. Raise to 425. Rick folds. Players are on break. When we come back.
I need cards to see what's going on. So.
We're just going to take a temporary break here, folks, and you try to get the whole cards back up on the screen so you can play along at home. Well, it happened right before that, I think.
6 diamonds for the flush.
Okay.
9. Very nice. Nope. Steve decided he wanted to come up.
Come up a flush, how'd that work?
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I could drop a chair.
Just don't stand up.
No.
Okay. Maybe I hit the reset button. I didn't want to. I don't know. It was right after that it didn't come back, and I thought sometimes it waits a hand, but. Okay.
How's John?
Good.
Still at the same place?
Steve's in there.
Alright.
Navigators did it.
Alright, bring it back. Yes, sir.
Okay, folks, I think we got everything sorted out, and we're ready to play the next hand. Got our blinds up there. We got Steve with the button under his name. Everything's looking good.
50, Rick 100. Clock starts. Now.
Action will be on Steve first. He has what they call the Dolly Parton, the 9 to 5. Yeah, flops Rick here. Yeah, I was kind of figuring one bet's gonna take that one. My only thought process is if Rick has an ace, he's probably raising pre-flop. So do you really need to risk 200 to win 200 in that spot? You could probably get away with just betting 100. And if Rick comes along, reevaluate on the turn. When you bet 200 and he calls when you're betting bottom pair, you're kind of in a tough spot. So if you can get away with betting less and getting the same results, you definitely want to try that. See what Rick does here. Just gonna limp in.
275 total.
So I hope it's an example of Steve. You know, he can get away with raising a little bit smaller, especially when Rick limps in. When Rick has been raising a lot from the button, turns out he's actually had some pretty good hands. So if Rick's limping button, Steve should take that as weakness, and he can probably get away with raising, you know, a good portion of the time. And if Rick's thinking about that, Rick should know that every now and again he can limp the button, trap Steve, and re-raise. It all depends on how they feel about each other's play and if they are thinking about these kinds of things. Okay, both players are flopped up and down straight draw. Let's see who plays it more aggressively.
Raise to 6 or more.
It looks like a bet and a raise here. Rick made it 200. Steve quickly made it 6. And Rick's coming along. Now Steve has to redraw to the nuts. If a 7 comes, he'll have the nut straight. And the deuce would chop the pot. Well played by Steve there. Played his draw
How long you been?
quite aggressively and got the job done.
1986.
As you can see now, Steve's pulling away.
Always worked alone?
But one double up changes everything by Rick. Sometimes it's the hardest thing. You know, you start building up a chip lead, and then you try to put the pedal to the metal, and next thing you know, your opponent doubles up through you, and all your hard work goes for naught.
And actually, I had another partner. The guy who taught me had since retired. But
250 total. 150.
Okay, bet and raising the call. We are blind again on this hand. It's like 7-5-4 on the flop. Steve checks. Rick continues. Steve calls. So there are 2 hearts on the board. My apologies, there was a 7 of diamonds, not a 7 of hearts. So now it's 7-5-4-6, I believe. And Steve gets the job done. He's a force to be reckoned with, folks. Also, Steve flopped the straight, and Rick had the gut shot for the wheel draw. Steve pushing ahead now, more than 2-1 chip advantage.
During the regular game, you live a long way away, but you do have most of your business here locally, Carolina.
Fairland, Montrose, Akron, Cleveland, east side of Cleveland. Just an hour drive no matter where I live. Doesn't matter.
Steve talking business, trying to distract his opponent from his raise he's about to make.
Total.
No.
And he gets the fold. Seems to be that Rick works in paint, judging by his attire. I think he hangs drywall, does the paint, all around handyman. So ladies out there, if you got any loose gutters, give Rick a call.
Hour and a half, you said?
No, an hour. No matter where I live. I lived in Hartnell for 10 years. No matter where I live, it's an hour. Right.
We can't see Rick's hand here, but when he's raising the button, I'm fairly certain that he's got a fairly strong holding. I think Steve might be picking up on that.
I married my second wife. She lived in Spencer, where the family farm is. And she just inherited the farm a couple of years ago.
Maybe there's deer on the farm. I don't have to go to Missouri.
There's deer out there.
In Hartnell?
No.
No, where you're living
Spencer.
now. Okay.
Spencer, no. We have 148 acres.
Steve was still a fairly commanding lead here.
One the other 2 years ago. On Interstate 71 at 75 mile an hour.
200 to play.
Oh,
100 more.
Oh yeah.
Steve with a min race here.
I'm still driving the van.
100 more, Rick.
Yeah.
There's what I wanted.
No.
Player folds.
This now is some sort of like 5-6, 6-7 hand at maybe like a
I've got
double gapper,
almost 200
6-4, 7-5 that Rick decided to pass up on.
Hope to get another 200 a hole.
How many more years will work?
I don't think I'll ever retire. I see people retire. They sit in front of the TV and they die.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they just die. I'm going to slow down, obviously, but raise.
Rick raising on the button here. Oh, Steve's gonna come along.
see.
Check.
It's like a 3-4-7.
350 bet.
2 clubs. Rick bets 400. It's like Steve might have some sort of flush draw here. Straight draw possibility. Nah, I don't think he's folding a flush draw.
You think of Kenny Riley in the Sun Department? He just died last week. And a guy named Denny Fox.
I'm not gonna bet it.
Denny was an old Marine and always wore assistant coach at
I'll start here. I think maybe the big one or the chip count on the screen.
Let me keep doing that.
I think.
Did you see what I did?
So you went like back to the.
I went to disable the.
There's 2 people in the last month that died, that regular poker players. That's unfortunate.
Check.
200.
Alright, everybody, cards are back. Rick with a monster flop. With the 2 pair. Steve has bottom pair and now a straight draw.
12.
Raise to 12.
Steve's got to feel pretty scared with this raise on this turn card. The action's been pretty heavy. But at this point, you're getting 4-1. Probably the right fold there, though. Rick hasn't shown too much aggression with absolutely nothing, so at that point, Steve has to know that he's probably drawing to only a 6 at that point.
Sir.
Just probably a little bit closer to even now. That was a pretty good sized pot for Rick. Couple of 5s for Steve in this hand. Rick going back to his habits of limping the button with weak hands and raising strong with his good hands.
I can keep text from me.
Series of delay.
Yeah. Well, I think I told him over 5 minutes away.
I don't know how you break that. I mean, you get some contact from your family and friends telling you how your phone's going. That's what happens out in Vegas, right?
Absolutely.
Steve here with Doyle Brunson, the 10 deuce.
Check.
Using the same method as Rick here. Pair of 2s for Steve.
Check.
2 overcards for Rick. Check, check.
Check.
Freehand.
Scare card comes and Steve bets over the pot. Like I said earlier, I think you can get away with maybe betting half that to get the same results. I mean, if you think your opponent has nothing, why would you bet a lot? If you think they have something, you know, bet small, then you can reevaluate, or not bet at all. You know, you do have a pair. Rick on a button here to see how he values king high.
Raise. 300.
He values it correctly. Makes it 3x. Steve quickly calls for this queen 4.
Check.
Check.
Ooh, I wondered if Rick was going to continuation bet there. He decides not to.
Check.
800.
Oh,
Ooh, big bet. Big bet. Same goes for Rick as I was saying for Steve. You can find out the same amount of information with a much smaller bet. You don't have to bet over the pot to scare your opponent off the hand. It's really hard to make a pair. You know, when your head's up, your opponent's not gonna make a pair all that often. So you can take a lot of pots down with high cards, with smallish bets, just because they're not gonna continue with
Probably
complete
tell me
error
I'm
very
going
often.
Actually, you guys are still pretty even. Steve has 54.50 and you've got 44.50.
Steve with the slight lead at this point in the chip counts. We've yet to see a fold though, I think, in this heads-up match pre-flop. A number of limps, but no folds.
Check.
Decent flop for Steve.
300.
No.
Bet 300 for his 3.
Blinds right, next hand.
After this hand, our blinds will be up to 75 and 150. Rick to act first here. Pretty strong holding with the ace-8.
Right.
Expect the raise.
300 call.
Steve says, I'm not going to give it to you that easy. Quickly calls. And now flops him.
Check.
Big flop.
Steve flops top pair. But Rick comes barreling pretty heavy. Steve thinks about it and calls.
Check.
Check on a turn. 3 sevens for Steve. See if we can try to squeeze out a little value bet here. Problem is, I don't think Rick's gonna call anything.
25.
Oh, he's thinking about it.
Calls. Show me a winner.
3 sevens for Steve's gonna take it down.
Side.
Queen 8.
Big pop for Steve.
I didn't.
That's alright.
You'll hear that feed go off in just 5 minutes. Dumbass.
Absolutely. You had ace high and heads up. That can be a good hand.
So Rick thinks that his friends are gonna be texting him, telling him that he played that hand poorly. But
Left box over.
as you heard Tony say in the background there,
Chris isn't here.
the battle of the value of ace high is it's pretty strong heads up. You know, if you think Steve's just goofing around with maybe a missed flush draw, that ace high is not the worst call in the world by any means.
No, I was just saying I don't think he showed his hand.
Okay.
Rick with
Oh, I
another
did.
good sized ace.
Did
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I flipped
Yeah,
him
you
over.
see what you had.
Steve in a button here.
75 goes.
9-10's also a pretty strong holding. Rick seems to be dominating Steve in a lot of these hands though.
225 on top.
375 total.
I have a feeling Rick might go all in.
Going for a 3-peat.
He's just mad because Brunson him once or
Yes,
twice.
Yes.
Re-raise. 375.
Hang on. 1175.
1175 total.
Now Steve should slow down and think about this. He's acting pretty quickly. If he would slow down and think like, there hasn't been a 3-bet yet in this match. Now all of a sudden Rick's 3-betting him. Oh, this could be trouble.
All in.
1725.
Now at this point, Steve's in a pretty tough spot and he's getting the right price to call.
Yes, sir.
Being better than 2-1. Now, if Steve calls and loses his hand, he's gonna be on the short stack, going against the chip leader. Sometimes making these tough folds and keeping some of your ammunition in the tank is a lot better than making these really tough decisions and making bad calls. Wow, really good fold by Steve. I think maybe he had the same thought process. Holding onto his chips for having extra ammunition is better than making a call that you're just hoping you're ahead. I wish you would have thought about it beforehand. You know, if you would have thought back to the pre-flop story that Rick was telling. No, there hasn't been a raise and a re-raise yet this heads-up match pre-flop. So maybe 9-10 could have found the muck pre-flop before you faced that much adversity on the flop.
Right.
Rick with another strong holding. Steve with the Joe Montana 49ers. I think it's going to find the muck here. We teased these two last night in our cash game broadcast about being the two old guards at the poker table, but they're not playing like old guys. They're playing like a couple young guns, letting the chips fly. It's nice to see.
You used to do this, didn't you? Used to do that.
Steve at 10 deuce again.
Let me get this table.
Did I?
No, before.
Calls from 50 option.
Right, 3 home.
Going up 3 more. 450.
Limp and a raise.
3 on top.
Kind of be expected here. And Steve makes the decent choice to let his hand go. Oh, these guys playing nice, giving each other change.
It's okay. Become friends. Enjoy each other's.
Call.
Rick back in his calling mode on the button. Steve happily checks in the big blind. Steve quickly checks after he flops air. No, brother.
3 home.
As it stands, it is a chop pot, but we might see. Nope, it's betting a call.
King, Jack, 8, 6.
Dealer spots the chop and he divvies up the chips. Steve would be on the button in hand. Pretty little king 7 suited for Steve.
Raised 3.
As you can see now that the blinds have gone up, the raise sizes have definitely been a little bit more appropriate. We're seeing doubles instead of the 5x that we were seeing in the early rounds. Good flop for Steve, flopping middle pair.
600.
So it seems like Steve likes to bet a little bit more when he doesn't have top pair. I'll have to ask him about that later. See where his mindset is on that. I'm not sure if he feels like he needs to bully someone off of their hand. I mean, when you're betting that much, you're not going to get anyone to fold top pair. So,
Like 3 game participation?
so
It's the first time we've
again,
ever
I was kind
had a
of
heads
reiterating
up.
what I'm saying earlier. Do you really need to bet that much?
I've
You know, if they
never
don't have, if they have top pair, they're going to be calling. Then you're just losing more. If they don't have anything, you know, it's a whole risk reward situation.
Call 150.
Raise. Freedom.
450 total.
Steve realizing that Rick's only limping weak hands, raises up with the queen 9.
You play much up the shoot.
Sometimes. I play a lot more table games now. A lot of roulette. Sometimes I go to the dice table, play craps. But mostly
Steve on a button here.
roulette. Come on.
Such a powerful position.
Raise 300 outside.
450 total. 3 more.
So again, Steve limped. Rick quickly raised, and Steve didn't really take his time to think about what he's raising with, and just quickly calls.
600.
Rick flops the ace. Steve doesn't have anything to contend with, and lets it go.
Table games is in solitaire.
What's that?
Table games is in solitaire.
No. As in roulette, blackjack, things like that.
Blackjack, that's what I meant. Not solitaire.
So if you can find casinos out there, I might give it a shot.
You never played that?
I think I.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of degenerate gamblers at the table talking about their
They
blackjack
pay $5
habits.
a card.
That's what it is.
Costs $52 to buy the deck.
Oh, really?
Whatever card gets turned over, whatever card you turn over, you get $5 for. Oh, I don't.
Small blind?
Small blind.
Yes, sir.
Rick on the button with 8-9 offsuit.
Yeah. Oh,
75 more.
no.
Fairly attractive hand, heads up.
But if I remember right, if you put an ace out, that doesn't count. You have to have at least another card on top of that ace
Oh,
in order to be paid back.
I'm thinking I played in Vegas and it was any card.
You guys are just talking
You got
gibberish. I don't
$5.
know what they're talking about. Blackjack, Vegas.
And it don't seem to me I never got
Something this-
$52 back.
A really fast way to lose a lot of money to me.
Yeah, but when you hit it big.
Yeah.
52 times 5 was that.
250 plus 10, 260. Right?
Wait.
Oh,
Steve likes to limp the button. Pretty good flop for Rick. He's up and open-ended.
200. Or, no, that's not.
250. 200 is okay.
200's okay.
200 is okay. So that's 200. Close to.
Interesting. Not sure what Steve has planned up his sleeve here. Ooh,
750.
well, Steve finally figures out that he can't win this pot unless he bets. Look at him wiggling in his chair. I'm gonna get away with murder. I'm getting away with murder. And he does. I'll have to remember that little wiggle next time I'm heads up with him. See if he's pulling a fast one on me. Steve's finally dominating Rick in a hand. King 2 first to 10-2. Sharing the 2.
Checks.
So maybe Steve hasn't really picked up on the fact that Rick's only raising premiums on the button. I think if he did, I think he would have learned that this has been a good time to raise. But Rick does outflop him.
155.
I think at minimum Rick's going to call here. If not raise. Mauling it over.
I want to get the feeling you're sucking me in.
Oh. Maybe.
800.
Maybe. Oh, the speech, then the raise.
What was the first part of that? How I got to get the feeling what?
You're sucking me in.
That's what I thought you said.
So we'll find out.
So if you think someone's quote unquote sucking you in, I'm not so sure you should say it out loud for one. And two, raising is a very interesting tactic. I mean, if you want to think it to yourself and raise and find out, sure, that's one way to do it. But to verbalize it to your opponent, then raise? Hey, you might be on some upper level thinking that I'm not even privy to. But Steve did notice that he got the speech and then the raise. So technically, I think a lot of poker tell books will tell you that's a sign of strength.
Chips coming in.
Here's your top of it. Roll back. Roll some strategy.
Raise.
Cost 150.
600 on top.
750 total. Oh.
Mine.
You're still alive.
75 150.
Okay. I thought it might
Another minute and a half or so.
2 minutes until my day. Close enough.
Nope. I'll try and roll over and raise.
I think Steve wins that one there at the ace high. Steve announced that the field goal was good. Or touchdown, one of the two. Oh, Steve with a good one here.
Yeah, I got Rick.
Oh, this could get interesting in a hurry.
It's fine, I just pass the button back.
Steve putting on a little act here. Oh man, he's waiting for to make sure that the hands are read correctly. There we go.
Cost 150.
Steve limps in, trapping his opponent
Rick just made this
perfectly.
every time I live. He's gonna raise me, so he thought he was fine. Cost 6.
And Steve nonchalantly throws his call in.
Check.
He goes check, check. It's a good card for Rick.
300.
So he bets 600 pre-flop, now he's betting 300. Interesting move. I think I'm Steve. I think I'm going to raise here. You pretty much, you successfully under-repped your hand.
Raise.
There you go. Just don't make it too big.
900 total. 6 more.
Rick's already looking at his chips like, well, I got a pair.
Cost 900.
It's getting to be a pretty good sized pot. Steve's just trying to avoid a 7 on the river. Queen of Spades is kind of scary. Rick's all in. Now Steve is just officially in the cage.
Looks like 18, 20, or 23, 25, something like that.
Now Steve has to be aware of what his image is in this hand. He's completely under-repped his hand.
25,
Rick didn't bet until he made the 7 on the turn.
300, 25.
I think if Rick had something like King Queen, I think he would have heard about it on the flop. I don't think he would have went check check. So I think Steve knows that you know, he definitely needs a call.
2,825.
Roll him over, and Steve's gonna be the champion.
Oh, nice.
Aces. Pair of
And that'll
sevens.
do it, ladies and gentlemen.
Aces. Take it down.
Steve is our 3-time in a row champion as our Akron Poker League points leader.
Sorry, Chris.
If I could get a hold of him right now, I could
No, my phone.
ask him to give a speech into the microphones,
Yeah,
but
thanks.
I'm not able to do so.
I'll let you get to that. That would have been.
It was a fun little heads-up match, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got to see some of the nuances of heads-up play. You know, have to expand your range, and you have to expand your opponent's range, and learn the game's a little bit different than when you're playing with a full nine-handed table. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and make sure you tune in next week for our wildcard game. We'll be broadcasting live again. You get to hear my lovely voice, and you get to see.
Sign just for you.
That was a beautiful sign for Mr. Steve Day.
Speech.
But until next time, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the other side.
Anything but aces in your hand, you would have called that?
That was. I thought maybe you hit the king.
I thought you had a king.
Go ahead and
I
click
just
stop.
thought if you hit the king.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So. But on the third spade come